Hello again, and welcome back to the next stage of the Persona 4 Golden Random Persona run. Have been, and will continue to be your host, Hobden, as we make our way through this game in a way never seen before. Because why would anyone other than myself do this? It's a surprisingly stupid decision to make, but I made it nevertheless, and will now commit to doing it to the end. Our Persona this time is once again weak to fire, something that I'm not surprised about at this point, but wow, the wheel and the game are still doing this to me, I know. This is the only time my Persona will be reasonably leveled, I believe, by default at least, at level 70, when I first picked it up. Something that was very helpful to me throughout this video, and I think it would have been much worse had I been given some random level like 30 to 40 thing that I've barely had the time to level up. But hey, at least I've got the time to do that with some of my others for later on. And I can assure you that I will have a lot of time to do that after the next dungeon. But that's not important to this video at least. So let's continue with what I was explaining before. So this made things very easy at the start of the dungeon. I can at very least say for now, because I don't want to spoil how it went after the mid-boss. Mostly because of our newest party member alongside the things I already had on this persona, because Naoto gets some of the strongest party member skills in the game. Mostly just being Mind Charge plus Almighty skills. At the very latest, going on to even get Megidoleon, the best Almighty skill that you can get outside of ones exclusive to personas, which is great because it makes things so much easier, because she can hit weaknesses of enemies. She's given us more, and the only thing we couldn't hit in this dungeon but can now hit is electricity. The only reason I could do this is through bike rides, something I will not be showing because I don't have the footage of the one that actually gave me it, because it was recorded in between segments, because I wanted to keep one part near the end off stream, because it didn't require to do any leveling or anything. It was just something that happens. I want to surprise people who aren't aware of this scene already being in the game. So if you have played the game before or watched stuff on it, you will know exactly what scene I'm talking about, because we are on the Heaven dungeon. The mid-boss is a returning enemy from the last dungeon, Big Scales, or as it's known by everyone else, the World Balance. Nerfed drastically compared to its Persona 3 boss variant, with moves that hit weaknesses instead of insta-kills and almighty skills being included, it only goes for your weaknesses now. Choosing to go for Mind Charge, plus, in order I believe, Fire, Ice, Electricity, and then Wind. Has the highest hitting heavy skills for each of those, but they're only the single target, so it can only go for one person's weakness per hit. Fortunately for me, I don't believe it went for the protagonist very many times, but when it did, I believe it often missed. I don't know if it ever actually had a chance to try and hit. I don't remember while I'm recording this voiceover, but you'll see in the video itself. Otherwise, it would have been a game over right there because of the Mind Charge and Persona's weakness to fire. Something that was still surprisingly easy as a fight because of me having Mind Charge, Naoto having Mind Charge, having access to Power Charge on other teammates, Teddy having debuff and buffing skills for defense and attack respectively. So it just made the boss very much a target of bullying by the investigation team. So it was a very fun fight there, which just made it very much a joke of a fight because of how easy something that could so easily end the run with a death there seemed to be. The higher floors of this dungeon were very easy. I bet you didn't expect that. Normally I'd go, oh, yeah, we had a lot of problems here because of the enemies, but no. It was surprisingly easy, but I'd say that's mostly down to the amount of golden hands the game threw towards me. Meaning I was one level below my initial cap with a further cap just in case I needed it of a single level, so it didn't really matter all that much. Going from my level cap of 65 to 66 in the case that I needed it, which I didn't. It was fine at 65, but we had already achieved level 64 by the time of reaching the final floor because of the amount of golden hands which were found during this time. But that's, I'd say, in my opinion, more because of the fact that they spawned in groups of 3 to 5. Something that is less common in other dungeons, but there are easier ways to get them in the secret lab through just going up and down the 6th floor, with 3 set spawns close by. But leveling strategies don't matter right now, but the floors were still easy because of the fact that it threw so many of these enemy types at me, and they give so much XP. I had reached one level below my initial cap before even reaching the final floor this time, meaning I could go to the boss fight relatively easily from that point. Now we're on to the boss fight itself. Kunino Sagiri, the big floating guy with the peace signs on his hands, and yeah, a fusion of Namatame and various shadows in the dungeon for some reason. This just happens in front of you in one big cutscene, but I didn't watch the cutscene in this playthrough. I normally watch it, but it still confuses me a little about what's going on. But apparently, according to the wiki, that's how it's explained. But yeah, this boss has its own weird gimmick. Nothing like the armor into little baby man like Mitsuo, though, in the 4th dungeon. But it does like to increase the effectiveness of one element while nerfing all the others significantly. That is done through the move Quad Converge, which is an almighty move, meaning it can't be blocked in any ways, but it doesn't deal damage anyways, so it'd be impossible to block in the first place. But it has every single elemental attack at the heavy damage level, with both single hitting and multi-hitting or multi-target variants, and then it will randomly attack your party members with various moves through Quad Converge, which will randomly increase the effectiveness of a specific element type. The way you can find this is through either waiting to see what he uses, or just hitting him with everything and seeing what it will be. In most cases, in my versions of the fights, it would either be fire boost or an electric boost. One of those I already mentioned did not have electricity, and fire, which I only had on one character, and I was weak to on 2 party members. Something that killed me in my first attempt, the weakness to fire, but then I used a resist fire skill card and was able to get around this in the second attempt, which failed, I believe, once again as a result of Quad Converge, but because the attack that it went for, instead of having a buff or debuff to get rid of, it attacked twice because it didn't. Something I picked up on very easily throughout these fights, and realized as long as there was a buff for it to get rid of, or a debuff on itself to get rid of, it would go for that instead of going for a second attack. So it was making sure whenever it would go for that move that it would always have some kind of debuff, or I would have some kind of buff on the party in order to counter that. After a certain amount of time, it will use an unavoidable almighty move, Control, in which your teammates will attack you for a set amount of turns. I think it's either 2 or it's 3. Or they can choose not to attack, but nothing will happen there. So that can kill you, I believe, the controlled teammates, depending on the abilities they have and your persona's weaknesses and stuff. but it didn't happen to me, and it didn't really come close. I dodged nearly everything, or it just missed. I don't really know. I believe it is possible to die here though. Damaging the boss itself throughout the entire fight was easy, but because I had no way to easily prevent the boss from hitting weaknesses of my party, I did have to get relatively lucky with dodges and the one agility buff that I did have on me. Before we get into the final reflections of this video, there's something I'd really like you all to see that I feel is relatively important to show you at this point.
I'm scared. Big Bro. Dad and Annie.
Nanako! Nanako! I'm sorry, sir.
No.
Damn it! Damn it!
Now after that's all done, yes, you can beat Persona 4 Golden with randomly selected personas, if, and only if, you choose to get the ending here, but I can't leave it there. I'm not going to. I never intended to from the start. I wanted to see this all the way through to the end and find the truth of this story. I'm sure my sanity and the personas that I have and can get throughout will continue to get worse from here, but that's not important, and I will see you all in the next one, maybe even in my next stream. Yeah, Twitch is just the same here, the Hobden, and you will find me on a Tuesday at 10 AM British